Yeah, good evening. Jonathan Welch now back in jail tonight. He officially first bonded out on Friday, and then just 2 days later, prosecutors say he killed both his ex-girlfriend, his stepdad, and critically stabbed his mom. In a court hearing earlier today, a judge acknowledged action didn't come fast enough.
And although it's far too little, far too late.
Judge Kenneth King's heartbreaking words show a stark reality as Jonathan Welch appeared in court on video.
This is the court's worst nightmare, worst possible scenario that could happen, in that a witness has been killed after the defendant was placed.
On June 4, 2022, a quiet neighborhood in Harper Woods, Michigan was forever changed. A brutal crime shook the community, leaving 4 lives lost. But it all began with something that might seem small. A cell phone password. A personal boundary became the spark that set off a chain of events no one could have ever imagined. What seemed like an ordinary disagreement quickly escalated, leading to a night of unspeakable horror. We extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of the victims. Our hearts ache for the unimaginable pain and loss you have endured. There are no words that can fully capture the grief you must feel as you now face a world forever changed by tragedy. To lose loved ones in such a brutal and senseless way is a pain no one should ever have to bear. As we remember Zlayaya, her family, and all the victims, we honor their lives, their stories, and the love they gave to those around them. We hold you all in our thoughts, and we hope that, in time, you find the strength to heal, even as we know the journey ahead will be long and filled with heartache. You are not alone in this sorrow. Our hearts are with you every step of the way.
Jail, and he killed my sister. He killed my sister.
Prosecutors say Welch barricaded himself in his mom's Harper Woods home, shot at police, and set the house on fire. He's also accused of killing his ex-girlfriend, Zlayaya Frazier, his stepdad, Robert Bray Jr., and critically stabbing his mom.
They should never let him out of prison. I don't have nothing to say.
Jonathan Welch, a man already facing serious charges for abuse, was out on bond, a man with a violent past. His ex-girlfriend, Zlayaya Frazier, was someone he once shared a life with, a mother, a daughter, and a friend to those who loved her. His mother, Flossie Nicole Bray, and his stepfather, Robert Bray Jr., were also part of this tragic story. And there's another victim, 24-year-old Natayla Morse, whose life would be taken by the same hand that had caused so much pain. What was it that set Jonathan off? What caused this man to destroy everything, including the lives of the people closest to him? It began with something small, something that at first seemed harmless, a fight over a phone password, a simple request. But what came after was anything but simple. A series of attacks followed, each one more brutal than the last. It would lead to 3 lives lost, and a community left in shock, struggling to understand what happened. The answers? They were far from easy to find, and the deeper we looked, the more disturbing the truth became. Zlayaya Frazier grew up in a small, tight-knit community. Born and raised in Harper Woods, Michigan, she was the kind of person who made friends easily and carried a light in every room she walked into. She was known for her warm smile, her laughter that could fill the air, and the way she made people feel seen. Zlayaya wasn't just a face in the crowd. She was someone who cared deeply about the people in her life. In school, she was driven, always focused on her studies. Zlayaya had big dreams. She wanted to create a future that would not only make her proud but also provide a better life for her family. Her teachers remember her as a hard-working student who was always eager to learn, someone who took her education seriously. But more than that, Zlayaya was kind. She would often go out of her way to help others, whether it was a classmate struggling with homework or a friend needing a listening ear. After finishing high school, Zlayaya knew she wanted to work with people. She found her way into a job at a local movie theater, where she became a familiar face at the ticket counter. She enjoyed the social aspect of her job, meeting new people every day, exchanging stories, and making connections. It wasn't the most glamorous work, but to Zlayaya, it was more than enough. She was proud of what she had achieved and always worked hard, showing up early, with a smile that never seemed to fade. Though her work and schooling painted the picture of a bright future, Zlaya's life was never without challenges. Like anyone, she faced hardships, some personal, some familial, but she always seemed to rise above them. Her heart was big, her spirit strong. No one could have predicted how everything would change in the blink of an eye, when a personal request would lead to an unimaginable nightmare. Jonathan Welch, the man whose actions would forever change the lives of those around him, had a troubled past. His history of violence and outbursts had followed him from his youth into adulthood. Known for his volatile temper, those close to him feared his explosive anger, especially when he didn't get what he wanted. Despite facing charges of abuse and torture, Jonathan was free on bond, a decision that would lead to tragic consequences. Zlaya's mother, Flossie Nicole Bray, was a woman who worked hard to provide for her family. She had always been there for Zlaya, offering love and support, trying her best to keep her daughter's life on track. Zlaya's stepfather, Robert Bray Jr., was also a steady presence in her life, a man who worked diligently to provide for his family. Together they were the quiet, loving backbone of Zlaya's world until their lives were abruptly taken. Natayla Morse, another victim in this tragic sequence of events, was just 24 years old. Like Zlaya, Natayla had dreams for her future, though her life was tragically cut short. While details of her relationship with Jonathan remain unclear, what is certain is that she, too, would become a victim of his rage.
Incarcerated, she is now dead, his father's now dead, his mother's in a hospital bed, and he's got a baby out there that'll, in most likelihood, never see his father again, and I'll never have a chance to know the baby's mother.
Attorney James Gallen Jr. says one purpose of bond is to protect the public.
Allegations are one of the things they take into consideration. There's a number of factors that are supposed to be taken into consideration when a judge or magistrate setting a bond.
Jonathan and Zlaya's relationship started like many others, filled with hope, promises, and dreams for the future. They were a young couple, living their lives, and soon they welcomed a child together. At first, things seemed perfect. Their little family appeared to have a bright future ahead. But as time went on, cracks began to form. What once seemed like a loving relationship started to unravel. There were moments, small moments, that hinted at the tension beneath the surface. Arguments that were brushed off, but they were growing. Zlaya never imagined that one small act of resistance would cost her life. It all began when Jonathan demanded access to her phone, her personal boundary. Jonathan wasn't a man without history. His temper was something those closest to him had come to fear. Those who knew him knew that when he didn't get what he wanted, things could escalate quickly. He had always been unpredictable. Moments of calm were often shattered by sudden outbursts, and over time those around him learned to tread carefully, always aware of the simmering anger just beneath the surface. His volatile nature wasn't something hidden, it was clear. He had fits of rage, often over the smallest things, and those closest to him, Zlaya, his family, were the ones who bore the brunt of it. But even they never saw what was coming. No one could have known what would happen next. Zlaya had been living in fear for weeks. It wasn't always this way. She and Jonathan once shared good times, love, hope, and a future. But slowly his anger started to show. It was in the way his eyes would harden over nothing, the way he'd snap at the smallest things. Zlaya never knew when it would happen, but she learned to be cautious, always second-guessing herself, always on edge. She never imagined it would escalate this far. She tried to protect herself, protect their child, but with every outburst she felt a little more trapped. The fear wasn't just in his words, it was in the tension, the silence that filled the spaces between them. She knew Jonathan was unpredictable, she knew his temper was a part of him she couldn't change, but she didn't think it would ever lead to this kind of danger. Every argument, every fight, she could feel it building up. A time would come when she would have to face the fear she had been living with, and that time was now. What happened next was nothing like she'd ever feared. For hours, Zlaya endured pain she couldn't put into words. Her body was bruised, her spirit shattered. She fought back, fought for her life, fought for her child, but no matter how hard she tried, Jonathan wouldn't stop. She thought of her son, the future they once dreamed of together. She thought of her family, the ones who would never get to see her again. In those moments, her heart broke. She was supposed to be protecting him, but instead she was the one who needed saving. Every cry, every scream, felt like it was swallowed up by the violence that had taken over Jonathan. He had once promised her love, but now he was the one who was taking everything from her. What happened to the man she thought she knew? The man who had once held her in his arms. This wasn't love. This was a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. But Zlaya's story wasn't over. The real horror had only begun, and what would follow next would set off a chain reaction that no one could have prepared for. It started with Jonathan's fury. He was no longer the man she once knew, the man who had promised to love her. The man standing before her now was a stranger someone, filled with rage. As he raised his hand, Zlaya could feel every ounce of hope leave her. She knew that this wasn't going to end like the others. This time, there was no way out. With every movement, with every second that passed, the terror in her heart grew. She fought back, her body aching with each blow, but the more she resisted, the more determined he became. She tried to run, she tried to escape, but he caught her before she could make it. Her breath was shallow, her heart racing, and in that moment, she thought of nothing but survival. But Jonathan was relentless, and no matter how hard she tried, he wouldn't let her go. She had to keep fighting. She had to stay alive for her son, for her family. But as the pain worsened, she realized she was running out of time. The air around her felt heavy, suffocating. Every second felt like an eternity. Jonathan had already taken one life, but it wasn't enough. The violence he had unleashed on Zlaya had only ignited something darker inside of him. A need for control. A need for more. What followed next would shock everyone who knew him. It wasn't enough to take Zlaya's life. He turned to his family, those who had been there for him, those who had supported him. His mother, Flossie Nicole Bray, and his stepfather, Robert Bray Jr., had been the ones to offer him love when no one else would. But love was no match for his rage. In the hours that followed, Jonathan's brutality spread like wildfire. Flossie and Robert never saw it coming. They had no idea the monster Jonathan had become. The home that had once been filled with laughter and warmth was now a place of unimaginable horror. As the bodies piled up, Jonathan's actions grew more dangerous, more calculated. But what came next would shock everyone who knew him. His next move was his most horrifying yet, and no one could have ever imagined the depth of violence he would reach. The police were closing in, but Jonathan wasn't going to give up easily. With each passing hour, the hunt for him grew more urgent. The community was shaken, reeling from the violence that had ripped through their lives. The questions piled up. How could this happen? What drove him to do it? But Jonathan was elusive, and in the chaos of the investigation, time was running out. What happened when Jonathan was finally apprehended would leave you questioning the justice system and its flaws. His capture didn't bring the closure many expected. It only raised more questions about the choices made that allowed him to continue his violent rampage. And ultimately, it was the system that had failed in ways no one could have foreseen. Zlaya could feel her heart pounding in her chest as Jonathan's anger escalated. She tried to reason with him, her voice shaking as she pleaded, "Please, Jonathan, we have a child together. Stop! This isn't us. You're scaring me." Her words tumbled out, but they seemed to fall on deaf ears. Jonathan's face twisted with rage, the words he once whispered with affection now sharp with venom. "You think I care about that?" he growled, his voice cold and distant like a stranger standing before her. Zlaya's eyes filled with tears and she took a step back, feeling the wall behind her. She tried again, her voice barely a whisper. "Jonathan, please. I'm begging you." But instead of stopping, his anger only deepened. His next words came out in a low, threatening tone. "You should have given me what I wanted. Now you'll learn." Her chest tightened, her mind racing, but there was no escaping the terror in his eyes. As the tension in the room grew unbearable, Zlaya realized there was nothing she could say that would change him now. The man she had once loved had turned into someone unrecognizable, someone capable of the very violence she feared the most. It shocked everyone when Jonathan Welch, despite facing serious accusations of abuse and torture, was granted release on a $10,000 0 cents bond. A mere $10 0 cents. A decision that, in hindsight, would come to haunt everyone involved. Those who knew Jonathan could never have imagined how this would play out. How could someone with a history of violence be allowed to walk free? How could a man who had already caused so much pain be given the chance to do more harm? At the time, it seemed like just another flaw in a broken system, but as we would soon learn, that decision would lead to deadly consequences. Jonathan was free. As investigators dug deeper into the case, they began to uncover something far more chilling. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't some outburst of anger that got out of hand. No, what they found told a different story. Jonathan hadn't acted on impulse. In fact, he had been planning the murders all along. He had been meticulous, down to the smallest detail. From the timing to the method, everything had been carefully thought out. The violence wasn't random, it was calculated. The way he chose his victims, the way he lured them into his trap, it all pointed to a man who had already decided their fates long before the violence began.
With 19 counts, including premeditated murder, this time he's in jail with no bond. Reporting live, Veronica Meadows. We'll send it back to you.
Well, we are hearing about this far too often these days, Veronica, but do we know why didn't the prosecutor's office appeal the bond immediately?
Yeah, Taryn, we texted the prosecutor's office asking them that very question. They did get back to us this evening. They said they specifically wanted to wait until the preliminary exam. That is when the prosecutor's office said that they would have the chance to lay out all of the evidence in front of the district court judge. The prosecutor's office saying by laying out all of the evidence, they were more confident that the judge would grant a higher bond at that time.
They never got the chance to do that, obviously. All right, Veronica Meadows reporting live for us.
Now that you've heard the full story, Zlea's tragic journey, Jonathan's violent rage, and the devastating consequences of a system that allowed him to remain free, what do you think? Do you believe Jonathan Welch would have committed these murders if he had never been granted bond? Was the decision to release him a mistake? And how do we make sure something like this never happens again? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think about this case, the justice system, and the choices that were made. And if you want to stay informed about more true crime stories and to learn about other chilling cases that will leave you questioning the world around us, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Your voice matters. Join the conversation and be a part of this community.